Good morning. It's Thursday, May 23rd. And I've been reading some stuff about an area of our world that is sort of disconnected to the rest of us. And I'm talking about space. We have a lot of things going on in space that affect our daily lives. And I'm saying this because the Russians have launched some kind of spaceship that could be a threat to some of our satellites in space. And the satellites that we have in space are doing some very important things. They are helping our telecommunication systems to work properly. They are providing us with much information that we need that affect our daily lives. So when I read that the Russians have launched a spaceship, and I also read that this spaceship might be capable of attacking some of our satellites. And our satellites are very important because I said before, they're linked to our communication systems. Much of our telephone systems and stuff are helped to be able to communicate around the world by using these space objects that we have up there. So this is a serious problem that Russia would consider attack some of our equipment that is in outer space. Now, it's not like everybody has an area of space that belongs to them. Space is space. The satellites roam around, right? So nobody can claim that this section of space belongs to me and that section belongs to you and keep out, etc., etc. I would not be surprised if some of these space satellites are doing intelligence work for us. They might be up there watching lots of things that are going on in the world and reporting back to our government and our military. And I'm sure that Russia and China have similar space equipment up there that's doing the same thing. And that's a fact of life. Space is part of our life. So when the U.S. has assessed that Russia likely launched a counter-space weapon last week that is close to and capable of attacking a U.S. government satellite orbiting nearby, this is not the first time that Russia has launched a counter-space weapon, which is designed specifically to incapacitate or destroy satellites. And I was surprised to learn that Russia did this back in 2022. So when the launch comes at a time when the U.S. and its allies are increasingly concerned about Russia's efforts to develop a nuclear space weapon, that's a serious thing in our lives. And if deployed, such a weapon could potentially cripple a vast area of the commercial and government satellites that the world below depends on to make cell calls, to pay bills, to surf the internet. That would be a disaster for many people just in their ordinary day lives are so dependent on these satellites. So I can understand the concern that the U.S. government has with this Russian spacecraft. And the Pentagon spokesperson said that according to what they have seen and how they have assessed these Russian satellites, they had the same characteristics that resembled previously deployed counter-space payloads from 2019 and 2022. Now, while the ambassador of the U.S. is calling this entire thing troubling, the Russians have done the thing properly. They have issued 2 notices to airmen that became active on May 16th, indicating a possible space launch. One was for the launch itself, and the other was for the re-entry of a Russian space launch booster off the coast of Baja California. So the Russians are not sneaking around and doing these things without the proper notifications to the rest of the world. So yes, they might be doing something that we don't like and that we are afraid of in some way, shape, or form. But they are not sneaking about. So they're letting the world know that they have launched these satellites. And so maybe it's just a launch is going to be up there and we shouldn't sweat it. But I'm sure we will sweat it, because even if they came out and said openly that the satellites are up there, that doesn't mean these satellites wouldn't do damage to our system. And of course we have the U.S. and its allies working to deter Russia from developing a nuclear space weapon. That would be a disaster if Russia had a nuclear space weapon. Not that they might use it, but just the threat that they have it would put a lot of countries off balance, so to speak. Now, if they had such a weapon, it could destroy other satellites, and that would cause a massive energy wave, and that could possibly cripple a wide area of commercial and government satellites that the world below depends on to use for their cell phones and pay their bills and surf the internet. No, you threaten people with crippling them from the internet. That could drive them crazy. Many people live on the internet these days. So meanwhile, in April, the U.S. and Japan partly jointly introduced a UN Security Council resolution that called for UN member states not to develop space-based nuclear weapons. But Russia vetoed that, something the U.S. saw as a sign that it indeed is pursuing a nuclear space-based weapon. Now, the U.S. has veto powers, and Russia has veto powers, and China has veto powers. You know, they're part of the Big Five. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Russia is going to have what we believe they're trying to get, but that they are using their veto power because they have it, and they want Russia and they want the rest of the world to recognize that Russia is still a power. So it's a tricky situation with outer space. And I didn't realize, I never thought about this, that outer space is just as important as our land mass. So we have a space mass that we have to take care of. And I have to think about that. And I hope you can think about that too. Outer space has everybody who wants to be there can be there. There are no boundaries, so to speak. Something to keep an eye on. Have a great day. Bye.